If you think the homeless are just people sleeping on sidewalks, you haven't heard what some of them see at night. These 3 stories? They're the reason some officers refuse to patrol certain alleys alone. Welcome back to Fear Files Whispered. Tonight, we're stepping into America's darkest streets, the places most people avoid and some never return from. Settle in and listen closely. I never used to pay attention to the homeless camps scattered under the overpasses along Interstate 35 inches Austin, not because I didn't care, but because the highway has a way of making everything blur into background noise. I drove that route every night after my late shift at the warehouse, passing the same pillars, the same spray-painted concrete, the same tents made of tarps and shredded blankets. But around mid-October last year, I started seeing him. A tall man standing perfectly still in the shadows between 2 massive support beams just north of the Riverside exit. No shopping cart, no backpack, no bedroll. Just a man, unmoving, facing the traffic with his chin slightly down, as if he were looking through the tops of his eyes. The first time I saw him, I thought he might be high or lost in thought, the way some people get stuck in their own minds after too many bad nights. But the second night, and the third, and the 10th, he was still there, standing in the same place, in the same posture, like a statue someone had forgotten to remove. I kept telling myself it wasn't my business, but something about him dug into me, like a splinter you can't ignore. Maybe it was because my mom used to say people weren't meant to be invisible, and if someone kept showing up in my life, even if only in passing, I owed them at least a little recognition. Maybe it was because I'd been feeling alone since the breakup. Or maybe, if I'm being honest, it was because every time I drove past him, I felt this subtle pressure in my chest, like a warning I didn't understand yet. A few weeks later, after another 12-hour shift loading pallets, I merged onto I-35 heading home. It was close to 1 a.m. Traffic sparse, air heavy with humidity. As I approached the overpass, I slowed just enough to glance toward the pillars. He was there, of course, but something was different. His head wasn't angled downward anymore. It was tilted slightly toward the road, toward my car, like he was finally acknowledging me after watching me for weeks. I told myself I imagined it, that exhaustion was messing with my eyes. But it stuck with me for the rest of the drive. The next night, I decided I'd stop, just for a second, just to make sure the man was okay. When I pulled off the exit and doubled back, I felt stupid, like some naive idiot preparing to walk straight into a dangerous situation. Still, I parked my car on a side street, walked toward the overpass, and tried to steady my breathing. The city noise dimmed the deeper I went beneath the concrete. I could hear drips of water, the distant hum of tires overhead, and something else, a faint, rhythmic scraping, like nails lightly dragging across cement. It was too soft to pinpoint. As I rounded the pillar, the smell hit me. Damp fabric, cold concrete, and something metallic like rust or old blood. And then I froze. The man wasn't there. The space between the pillars was empty, except for a flattened cardboard sheet and a burned-out candle. I felt a wave of embarrassment. Maybe he'd moved. Maybe he'd never been homeless at all. Maybe I was losing it. But when I turned to leave, something caught my eye. Carved into the concrete at shoulder height were deep scratch marks. 4 long grooves slanted downward, like something had braced itself against the wall. They were fresh, the dust still clinging loosely to the edges. I didn't sleep well after that. Over the next few nights, I avoided the highway altogether, taking side streets even though they added an extra 15 minutes to my commute. But on the fourth night, construction forced me back on I-35. I told myself not to look, but the moment my car neared the overpass, my eyes drifted left on their own. He was there, standing again, same posture, same stillness. Only this time, he was positioned slightly closer to the road, as if he had taken a step forward during the days I'd been gone. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles popped. I didn't look away until the overpass disappeared behind me. That night, I dreamed of water rushing down the concrete walls, the sound of people screaming, the echo of something collapsing overhead. When I woke up, I remembered something vaguely familiar, a story my dad had told me once about the catastrophic 1981 flood in Austin. Over 13 inches of rain had fallen in less than 3 hours, overwhelming Shoal Creek and sweeping away cars, camps, and dozens of people along the low underpasses. Several homeless individuals had died that night, their bodies recovered days later trapped beneath debris lodged under the highway. It was one of the deadliest flash floods in Texas history. I hadn't thought about that story in years, but now every detail resurfaced. I couldn't shake the image of someone standing under the overpass during that flood, refusing to run, anchored in place while the water swallowed them. A few days later, I drove past again, partly because I had no choice, partly because some stupid part of me felt drawn to the place now. Habit, curiosity, loneliness, who knows? But as my headlights swept across the pillars, the man's head turned, not the slow, natural movement of someone tracking a car. It snapped, sharply, precisely. His face, if there was one, was shadowed beneath a hood, but I swear I saw the faint outline of a smile. I nearly lost control of the car. I pulled into a gas station a mile down the road, heart racing, palms shaking. The clerk must have noticed something was wrong because he asked if I needed water. I told him I was fine, but he didn't buy it. "You drive under the overpass back there?" he asked casually. When I nodded, he said, "You ever see that guy who stands in the dark? Tall, skinny, quiet?" I felt ice crawl down my spine. "You've seen him too?" He nodded slowly. "Everyone's seen him. But here's the thing. He's been dead since '81, drowned in that big flood they always talk about. Some folks say he's stuck there, reliving the moment he died." I wanted him to laugh, to shrug, to say he was joking, but he didn't. "People leave flowers sometimes," the clerk continued. "He never touches them. He just stands there, watching the road, like he's waiting for someone." I didn't sleep at all after that. And finally, last week, something happened that made me realize the man under the overpass wasn't just watching, he was approaching. It was raining hard when I got off work, the kind of cold, slanted rain that makes the streets shine like glass. The overpass ahead was drowned in darkness. As I neared, my headlights flashed across the pillars, and the man stepped forward, out of the shadows, into the open, slowly, deliberately, as if he knew exactly where I'd be and when. Water cascaded off him, but he didn't react to it. His clothes didn't cling. His posture didn't shift. He moved like the rain wasn't touching him at all. And then, when I was almost parallel to him, he lifted his head fully for the first time. His face was pale, bloated, the skin stretched thin like water-damaged paper. His eyes were wrong, murky, clouded, the way the coroners describe drowning victims, and his mouth, God. It wasn't a smile. It was open, slack, water dripping steadily out of it, like he was still trying to breathe. I hit the gas so hard that tires screeched on wet asphalt. But just before I shot past, I saw his hand rise, not waving, not reaching, pointing, straight at me, like I was the one he'd been waiting for all along. And now, every time it rains in Austin, someone knocks on my door at 1:07 a.m., the exact time the flood swept him away in 1981. I used to sleep behind the old boiler building on the edge of Boston's Back Bay, a place most people only pass during the day without looking twice. The city's steam tunnels ran beneath it, those ancient brick arteries built in the late 1800s to heat hospitals and universities. Every winter, those tunnels breathed like something alive. People said you could hear pipes clanging, pressure valves moaning, old metal expanding and contracting. But the homeless who slept around there, like me, had a different name for those sounds. The voices. The first time I heard them, I thought someone was messing with me. It was past midnight, a freezing February night that pushes into your bones. I was wrapped in 2 torn coats, leaning against the warm wall where the steam pipes ran, when I heard it just a faint whisper seeping up through a grate near my feet. A man's voice, slow, drawn out, like someone trying to get my attention from far, far away. Help me. It didn't sound like the city. It didn't echo like a tunnel. It sounded wet, human. I shot up immediately, thinking someone must have fallen down there. People sometimes broke in for warmth. Some didn't make it out. I knew that. Everyone in our camp knew that story about 1993, the man whose body was recovered half-cooked by a ruptured steam pipe. But the voice didn't sound like someone in danger. There was no panic, no desperation. Just a long, dragging whisper, "Help me." And then the sound of something scraping the brick underneath, like fingertips dragging across old mortar. I should have walked away. But when you're homeless long enough, your instinct to help someone in worse shape than you kicks in. So I knelt down and put my ear to the grate. "Where are you?" I whispered. The voice responded instantly. "Behind you." I spun around so fast I slipped on the frost. No one was there. The alley was empty except for a trash can and an old mattress someone dragged out months ago. When I looked back at the grate, the voice was silent. I told myself it had to be a pressure valve. Maybe the cold was getting to me. But Boston's nights have a way of making your thoughts echo. 2 nights later, I learned the voice wasn't just mine. A guy named Lennox, another regular around the Back Bay alleys, came up to me with eyes wide. "You heard it too, right?" he asked. I didn't bother pretending. He pointed at the same grate. "It keeps saying my name, man." That made my stomach twist. "Your name?" He nodded. "It says, 'Lennox, come down,' in this slow, whispery tone, like it knows me." That night, more people admitted they'd heard things. A woman named Rhea said the voice told her something about her daughter she hadn't seen in years. Someone else claimed it begged them to open the hatch near the old maintenance door. The hatch had been locked since the 1978 explosion that killed 2 city workers. Everyone knew the story. Steam pressure built up, ruptured, and one of the workers was found fused to the brick wall. Officially, anyway. On the streets, people said something else was down there with them, something that lived in the heat, something that fed on the dying. By the 5th night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I kept hearing my name whispered in that same dragging voice. "Eli, come down. You're cold. You don't have to be cold. One sentence bothered me more than the others. "You've been here before." I hadn't. I was from Worcester, not Boston. But the voice said it again the next night. "You've been here before. And then, you left me." That night was the one that broke me. Around 3 a.m., a thick fog of steam flooded the alley, pouring out of that grate like a living thing. It didn't behave like normal vapor. It stayed low, almost crawling across the ground. Inside the steam, I saw movement, a shadow, slow, human-shaped. The voice whispered louder through it, not from below anymore, but from within the fog itself. "Come back. I'm still here." I stood frozen, watching as a faint outline pushed against the fog, like something trying to climb out of it. Not fully visible, not solid, but there. My breath iced up instantly, even though the steam was hot. Then a hand blackened, blistered, skin melted into something shiny like plastic, pressed against the grate from below. Fingers long and burnt-looking, fused in places. And the voice became clear, not distant, not echoing. It was right at the surface. "Eli, why did you leave me in the fire?" I staggered backward. I didn't know anyone who died in a fire. Not family, not friends, but the voice sounded like someone who knew me, someone angry. The steam thickened, rising up in swirling pillars, surrounding me on all sides, and inside it were faces dozens warped by heat, stretched thin like melted wax. Their mouths opened and closed in silent screams. I did the only thing I could. I ran. I didn't stop until dawn. When I returned the next day, the grate was covered with caution tape. City workers were down there, investigating a pressure irregularity. Lennox wasn't around anymore. Neither was Rhea. People vanish on the streets all the time, but the timing was wrong. Too perfect. Too quiet. A week later, the maintenance hatch was welded shut entirely. New locks, new signs. The city didn't want anyone going down there for any reason. But at night, when the alley goes empty and the traffic noise fades, you can still hear the whisper rising up through the cracks in the brick. It doesn't use my name anymore. It uses new ones. The names of the people sleeping close by. The ones desperate for warmth. The ones who lean too close to the steam. After a while, you start to understand its pattern. It calls to the cold ones. The lonely ones. The ones who won't be missed right away. When the winter gets bad in Boston and the steam rises thicker than usual, I move to another block. Because if you stand too close to the grate, the voice stops whispering one name and starts whispering yours. I used to live near the old bus depot on the south end of Capitol Hill, a place most people in Denver only drove past with their windows rolled up. At night, the wind funneled through the empty streets like something searching, and the alleys smelled like cold asphalt and cheap cigarettes. If you were homeless there long enough, you got used to the sounds, sirens, drunk shouting, cars peeling off from the mall after midnight. But there was one person whose presence none of us ever got used to, the woman who slept standing up. I first saw her near the loading ramp of the abandoned depot, under a flickering security light that buzzed like a dying insect. She stood perfectly still, her forehead tilted just barely toward the concrete wall, as if leaning on nothing. Her coat was long and black, the kind that looked more like a funeral shroud than clothing. Her hair hung in tangled gray strips, unmoving even when the wind blew hard. At first, I assumed she was some addict stuck mid-high. But then I realized She wasn't touching the wall at all. She stood maybe 2 inches away from it, her body unnaturally balanced, like something was holding her up from behind. I whispered to the only other guy nearby, an older vet named Carter, asking if he saw her too. He didn't even turn his head, just muttered, "Don't look at her too long. She doesn't like that." I laughed a little, thinking he was screwing with me, but he didn't crack a smile. "Just don't," he repeated, and then he rolled over and pretended to sleep. That woman didn't move the entire night. Not when footsteps echoed through the alley, not when a bus roared on the street nearby, not even when the temperature dropped so low I could see frost creeping up the metal door behind her. She didn't shiver. She didn't breathe heavy. She didn't even blink. When dawn came, I looked over expecting her to still be there, but she was gone. No footprints, no drag marks. Just a faint imprint of warmth on the wall where her breath might have been, except she'd never touched it. A week later, I saw her again. Same position, same clothes, same unnatural stillness. This time she was near the corner of a boarded-up convenience store, 2 blocks from the depot. She faced the wall again, standing just a hair away from it, like she was listening for something inside. The city noise didn't seem to reach her. The yelling, the buses, the metal dumpster slamming shut as someone scavenged through it. She just stood there, listening. I tried to ignore her. You see a lot of strange things when you're living on the street, and not all of them are supernatural. Some people are just broken in ways the world doesn't understand. But something about her never felt human. And I wasn't the only one who thought that. A kid named Ray, only been homeless 2 months, swore she whispered his name one night. He told me she turned her head a fraction of an inch when he walked by, not to look at him, but to angle her ear toward him. He moved to another block after that. A woman named Teresa refused to walk anywhere alone after dark. She said she woke up one night to find the woman standing 6 feet from her, facing not a wall this time, but her, still as stone, eyes open, watching her sleep. Teresa packed her things and left Denver the next day. I didn't believe her story at first, but then it happened to me. It was late November, the kind of night where every breath feels like it's scraping your lungs. I slept behind a mechanic's shop, near a stack of old tires that shielded me from the wind. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No noise, no movement. Just that instinctive jolt your brain gives when you know something is wrong. At first, I didn't see anything. Then, my eyes adjusted. She was standing 10 feet from me, facing me, not a wall, me. Her chin was slightly lowered, but her eyes were locked onto mine like she'd been watching me for hours. Her coat didn't move. Her chest didn't rise. She didn't fog the air with her breath. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She didn't approach, didn't twitch, didn't blink. She just stood there, like an abandoned mannequin someone left behind. After what felt like minutes, she lifted her head the tiniest bit, and even though she didn't open her mouth, I heard something. Not in the air, in my ears, or maybe in my mind. A whisper that didn't sound like English, or like any language I knew. A slow dragging sound, like words being pushed through water. Then, very faintly, something that sounded like cold. I pulled myself upright, shaking. She turned her head, not her body, just her head toward the wall beside me. And then she walked toward it. No hesitation, no adjustment. She just glided forward, her feet brushing the pavement with barely any friction. When she reached the wall, she didn't turn or stop. She just leaned forward and stood there again, 2 inches away from the brick, facing it the way I'd first seen her at the depot. as if she'd forgotten I existed. I moved out by sunrise. I told myself it had to be a sleep paralysis hallucination, a trick of the cold, a nightmare. But then I heard about the disappearances. 3 homeless men gone within a month. No signs of struggle. No belongings left behind. Just vanished. All of them had slept within a few blocks of where she'd been seen. A building inspector told me quietly one morning while drinking coffee outside the nearby Mission that many of the old buildings around there had weird, dead spaces behind the walls. Tiny voids left by past renovations, old elevator shafts, sealed-off maintenance corridors, places where someone could hide or get stuck. You'd be shocked how many people get lost in this city's walls, he said, half joking but half not. I didn't laugh, because the more I thought about it, the more I noticed a pattern. Every time I saw her, she was near a building with known dead space, old brick structures with patches of wall rumored to be hollow or sealed up decades ago, as if she was listening for something inside, or something inside was listening for her. One night, after an especially cold snap, I found Carter, the old vet, sitting by a trash fire with a blanket wrapped tight around him. He looked worse than usual. Pale, eyes wide. "You saw her again?" I asked. He nodded. His voice cracked. "She's not sleeping," he said. "She's waiting." Waiting for what? He stared at the flames like he expected a face to form in them. For someone to open the wall. I moved farther away from that part of Denver after that. The shelters filled up fast, but I didn't care. I just needed distance. But you can't avoid someone you don't understand. 2 weeks later, I saw her again, 3 miles away, near an abandoned restaurant scheduled for demolition. Same posture, same coat, same frozen stillness, facing the wall, as if she knew I'd come nearby, as if she'd been listening for me. I don't sleep outside anymore. I don't walk alleys alone. And I never ever touch the walls of old buildings, because sometimes, when I pass by an empty structure at night, I feel a soft vibration through the bricks, a tapping rhythm, like fingernails. And every once in a while, usually around 3 a.m., when the cold is deepest and the streets of Denver go silent, I hear a muffled sound pushing through the wall. A dragging whisper that doesn't belong on this side of it. A voice that sounds almost like a woman. Almost. Calling out for someone still awake. Someone not moving. Someone standing. And sometimes, when I'm really unlucky, it says my name. If you're still here, thank you for listening to these true stories from America's darkest streets. If you'd like more whispered horror, more real encounters pulled from the shadows, you know what to do. Stay safe out there, and remember, some people don't choose the darkness. The darkness chooses them. Good night.